Welcome back, guys, to this video. This is a video I wasn't expecting to have to make, and it concerns last night's Etsy EtSEO webinar, which was done by Ratish Naroor, who is Etsy's head of global SEO. Okay, let me be clear, head of global SEO for Etsy. So this EtSEO, EtSEO is how they do it. EtSEO, you'll see it in my card for the video. The webinar was for people to understand how their listings are affected and get ranked in Google. Okay, so there was 1,000 people plus in this webinar last night. I was there along with 1,000 plus other people, and it was incredibly poorly done and damaging, and people were very, very confused. And I feel compelled. I'm so angry about what they did last night in this webinar. I feel compelled to do this video and tell you guys, calm the sea, and give you guys some straight talking information so that people, frankly, don't mess up their Etsy stores. It's that bad, it really is. So Ratish Naroor, what he was doing was basically going through Google SEO basics to people in the webinar. Now this webinar, I believe, is now somewhere on the Etsy website, so more than a few thousand people are going to see it. I'd say it would go into the tens of thousands are going to see this video, and it is incredibly confusing because he was talking, he didn't say in the video what works for Google, don't expect it to work for Etsy. So he was going on about product titles in Google being 50 to 65 characters, which is what Google reads. That's correct. That's Google basics, Google SEO basics. It's not the same for Etsy. And it was the context that was missing. He had no concept that the 1,000 people in the webinar were rotating. So it wasn't just 1,000 people. They were coming in and out, and people were changing all the time, and people weren't getting the context. And the context was, this is for Google. So if you do what Google wants you to do, that's not what Etsy wants you to do. You start making your product titles short, you are going to lose sales, right? I'm telling you this straight now. If you shorten your product titles, you are going to lose sales. But that's what Google wants. So the people in the webinar, the first 5 or 10 minutes, it was just waffle and, nothing. A lot of it was really, really boring, and he was saying things that haven't been the case for 20 years, like keyword stuffing. Everyone knows about Google and keyword stuffing and just to write your titles normally. Okay, maybe not absolutely everyone, but most people know that. And people were getting confused because everyone was saying, hang on, everyone on Etsy keyword stuffs, repeating keywords. And people didn't understand that the translation between talking about Google and Etsy got lost. So everyone was confused, saying, well, what do we do? Do we do shorter titles now? Is that what we're going to do? And it's irresponsible. It's irresponsible for a global head of SEO not to repeatedly tell the audience, this is for Google. What I'm telling you now is for Google. It will affect your Etsy shop differently if you do this stuff for Google. And, you've got shops that do, these are livelihoods. These are businesses. They might do, $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 a month. That's their job. That's their livelihood. These people go and shorten their product titles because they think that's what they should do because they were confused, like a lot of sellers were in that webinar last night, confused to hell by what this guy was saying. They're going to lose money. They're going to lose money hand over fist. And I think it was just so poorly laid out. And Ratish, no disrespect to Ratish, but he was not a good conversationalist. It was difficult to understand him. He didn't have a grasp of some of the more advanced words in the English language. Like, he had an SEO example. He couldn't say the words properly. It was disjointed. It was confusing. So guys, listen to me. This is what I'm saying to you based on what was said last night. Number one, do not shorten your product titles. Don't touch your product titles and start making them 50 to 65 characters. You will lose a boatload of sales if you do that, okay? Do not try to make your listings work for Google. The whole webinar was such a waste of time. You don't need to focus on Google. It will take care of itself. You want to know the reason why they're telling you to do that? It works for Etsy. So when Etsy talk about social media and they talk about Google, of course they want you to work harder in social media and Google, because then they get free publicity. They're desperate to get more and more buyers and sellers onto the marketplace. I've told you guys so many times, they don't give a stuff about sellers. They say they do, they don't. Trust me, they don't. And you've got to get this into your heads. So don't think you've got to do this work because then you're going to get more sales from Google and all this stuff. No, you concentrate on the almost 100 million sellers buying inside Etsy. That's our jobs to make a success of our stores. Your stuff will be found in Google. It will get found in Google. You don't need to do this, frankly, dangerous work to start appealing to Google in the vain hope that you might, get loads of sales coming in. No, that's not how it works. And people are incredibly confused. So I'm saying stick to Etsy, use all your product title space, use all your tag space, all your tag space for your tag words. Don't start worrying about titles for Google. Don't start thinking, I've got to do the first bit of my product description for Google. Don't waste your time. Google is not Etsy. Google is not going to replace your sales that you make on Etsy. You don't even want them to replace the sales. They had a Q&A section, a question and answer section, and they were cherry picking the questions. I put one in, and guess what mine was? Why are you telling people to use Google to improve traffic when you get no quality score at the sales level for those sales generated on Google? No chance they were going to answer it. And what was more infuriating, the number one question in the Q&A list was, if you're telling us not to keyword stuff, why are so many sellers on Etsy doing so well keyword stuffing? He answered, for Google. Don't keyword stuff for Google. But no one gives a stuff about that. I know that the webinar was for Google. The whole thing was misaligned. It shouldn't have been done. It's so confusing. So he was answering about keyword stuffing for Google. But all the Etsy sellers in the webinar, no, they don't care about Google. What we want to know about Etsy, and and he wasn't answering about Etsy. No one cares about Google. We want to know why, if you're about don't keyword stuff. Well, why is everyone doing so well? That's the question that everyone wanted answers to. So he did say at the end, maybe they'll do one on Etsy listing SEO. It's like, hello. Yes, that is what people need. We don't need the webinar for Google SEO. You just don't need it. It's totally unnecessary. I thought it was incredibly misleading and confusing for Etsy sellers. So that's the information. This was an emergency video because it's that important. I know there's a ton of confused people out there. So keep doing what you're doing. Don't do your SEO for Google. Just keep focusing all the product title space, all the tag space. Use natural language in your product descriptions. You don't need to waste any more time than that with that. And just keep doing what you're doing. Don't shorten your product titles. That will kill your sales. Okay, guys, get into my comments. Let me know if you were in that webinar. Let me know what you thought about it. Let me know what you thought about Ratish Naroor and his delivery of the presentation. I thought it was terrible. I congratulate Etsy occasionally when they do something good, and obviously I'll tear strips off them when they don't, because people need to know the truth. They need to know the truth about Etsy, and I get a lot of heat from people saying, you don't talk like everyone else. You're different. Everyone else says one thing, you say another thing. you know, but I keep getting proved right over time. You will see all these things I'm teaching you guys in my videos, it's going to get proved right. Yeah, get into my comments. Tell me what you think, you know. I thought it was a crazy webinar. Thank you, guys. Speak to you again soon. Cheers.